Have you ever thought about how you'd build a digital fortress around your AI? Well, that's exactly what we're going to do today. We're jumping right inside the AWS dashboard to look at the three key services that really form the backbone of a solid AI security strategy. So this is the big question, right? It's on every AI developer's mind. You've built this incredibly powerful tool, but, with great power comes great risk. So how do you make sure it's used safely and responsibly? That's what we're here to break down.
And look, the answer isn't some magic bullet or a single button you can press. Real security is built in layers, kind of like the defenses of a medieval castle. We're going to look at this through a three-pillar framework. First, controlling who even gets in the door. Second, protecting the AI's actual conversations. And third, keeping a constant eye on the entire environment for any funny business.
Okay, so our first pillar is all about access. I want you to think of AWS Identity and Access Management, or IAM as everyone calls it, as the high-tech keycard system for your whole cloud setup. It's not just about who gets in, but it's also about defining exactly what they're allowed to do once they're inside. This is your absolute first line of defense. Now, what's really interesting here is the core idea behind all of this: least privilege. The concept is super simple but incredibly powerful. You just don't give everyone the master key to the whole building. Instead, you give each person and each service only the bare minimum permissions they need to do their job, and absolutely nothing more. This just massively shrinks the surface area for a potential attack.
And this is a perfect example of how that works in the real world. This is an actual IAM policy for an AI service. Let's break it down. The effect is set to allow certain things. The actions are super limited, just read-only stuff like get and list for the resources, which are Bedrock and SageMaker. But, and this is the secret sauce, look at the condition. It says these SageMaker actions are only allowed when they're called through the Bedrock service. It's this kind of precise conditional rule that really locks things down.
Okay, so IAM is kind of like the bouncer, controlling who gets through the door. But what happens once they're inside and they start talking to your AI? Well, that brings us to our second pillar, protection. This is where Amazon Bedrock Guardrails come into play. You can think of them as these smart, automated safety nets for all your AI's conversations.
And their main job? It's a big one. Guardrails are specifically designed to protect your AI from the kinds of vulnerabilities you see on the OWASP Top 10 list for large language models. If you're not familiar, OWASP is a huge authority on web security. So this isn't just some random set of rules, it's a framework that's lined up with the best practices in the industry.
So guardrails protect the entire conversation from start to finish. First, they act as a prompt filter, basically cleaning up user input to block nasty requests before they even get to the model. Second, you can set them up to spot and block sensitive data, things like social security numbers or other personal info. And third, they check for contextual grounding, which means making sure the model's answers are actually based on facts, which helps prevent it from just making stuff up.
All right, so we've controlled access and we've built safety nets around the AI. But how do we make sure everything stays that way? Our third pillar is all about that constant vigilance, and the tool for this job is AWS Config. Seriously, it's like having a 24/7 compliance auditor that never sleeps, just constantly watching over your entire environment.
And you can really see the value of AWS Config when you look at it like this. On the left, everything's great. That's a compliant state, where all your resources are configured just the way your security policies say they should be. But if someone, even by accident, misconfigures something, boom, Config immediately detects, flags the whole environment as non-compliant, and tells you exactly what you need to go fix. It's totally automated oversight.
So how does it do all this? Well, it's got a few key tricks up its sleeve. First, it's always tracking any and every change to your resources. Second, it uses these pre-built managed rules to automatically enforce your security policies. And third, you can use something called Conformance packs, which are basically just ready-made templates of rules that line up with major compliance standards, like the one for handling credit card data.
Okay, so we've walked through the three big pillars of AWS AI security. Now, let's pull it all together into a really clear, unified blueprint that you can actually use.
At the end of the day, the crucial thing is to understand how these services work together, because they're a team. AWS IAM is your access control. It defines who can get in. Bedrock Guardrails are your input and output protection. They control what the AI is allowed to talk about. And AWS Config is your configuration monitor. It makes sure the whole system remains secure over time. Who, what, and remains. It's a really simple way to remember their different but connected jobs. And that really brings us to the most important takeaway here. True, bulletproof security for your AI systems isn't about picking just one of these tools. It's about weaving all three layers, access control, protection, and monitoring, into one single, comprehensive strategy. Each pillar holds the others up.
So, as we wrap this up, I'll just leave you with this question to chew on. Your AI might be up and running, doing some amazing things, but is it actually secure? Have you locked the front door? Have you built the safety nets? And have you set up a constant watch? Now you have the blueprint to make sure the answer to that question is a confident yes.